Look, I'm gonna tell you exactly what happened, because I'm tired of pretending like I should feel guilty about finally living my life. My name's Vanessa, I'm 40 years old, and until 10 months ago, I was married to the most predictable man on the planet. Keith's 43, works in supply chain management, and thinks that paying bills on time and remembering to take out the trash makes him husband material. We've got a 10-year-old daughter named Lily, who's honestly the only good thing that came out of our 12-year marriage. You want to know what passion feels like? It's not Keith asking, "How was your day?" while scrolling through his phone. It's not him patting my shoulder after 30 seconds of missionary position sex that leaves me staring at the ceiling, wondering if this is really what the rest of my life looks like. Passion is someone actually seeing you, wanting you, making you feel like you matter beyond just being there to handle the grocery shopping and parent-teacher conferences. I work at a medical office doing administrative stuff. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills. Keith's got his logistics job, and our whole life was this beige routine of work, dinner, help Lily with homework, watch whatever Keith wanted on TV, then go to bed and repeat. I started feeling like a ghost in my own house. Keith would come home, give me this absent-minded kiss on the forehead like I was his elderly aunt, ask what was for dinner, and settle into that damn recliner for the night. The gaming started because I needed something that was mine. Something Keith couldn't turn into another household management task or practical discussion about whether we were spending too much time on hobbies. I found this strategy game with chat features. And honestly, it was the first time in years I had conversations that went deeper than, "Did you remember to schedule Lily's dentist appointment?" That's where I met him, Master D. At first, it was just game strategy and casual conversation, but he had this way of taking charge of our team that was completely different from Keith's approach to everything. Keith's idea of leadership is asking, "What do you think we should do?" about literally every decision. Master D knew what he wanted and wasn't afraid to make it happen. When Keith would ask what I was doing on my computer, I'd say gaming, and he'd just nod, never showing any real curiosity about what actually interested me. That should have been my first clue about how checked out he really was. A husband who cares doesn't just accept surface-level answers about how his wife spends her time. Master D started messaging me privately, and for the first time in years, someone was actually listening to what I had to say. He'd ask about my thoughts, my dreams, what I wanted out of life. Real conversations, not Keith's autopilot check-ins that felt more like status reports than actual human connection. When Master D told me about his lifestyle, about being a dominant who guided women in exploring their deeper desires, something inside me just awakened. Here was someone who knew what he wanted and wasn't afraid to take it. Someone who made decisions instead of constantly asking me to choose everything from what restaurant we should go to what color we should paint the bathroom. Do you know how exhausting it gets being the only person in a marriage who's willing to have preferences about anything? The first time we video chatted, I felt more seen and desired than I had in my entire marriage. Master D looked at me like I was something precious and powerful, not just another item on Keith's daily to-do list. He explained that he had multiple submissives who competed for his attention and approval, and honestly, that motivated me in ways I didn't expect. Finally, someone with actual standards. Someone who expected excellence instead of just accepting whatever minimal effort I gave. When Master D started giving me commands during our calls, what to wear, what to say, what to do while he watched, I followed every single instruction. It felt like finally waking up after years of sleepwalking through my own existence. Keith would be downstairs watching some mindless show or helping Lily with homework, while I was upstairs discovering what it actually felt like to be wanted by someone who wasn't content with boring, predictable routine. I started taking photos and videos for Master D everywhere. In our bedroom while Keith was at work, in my office during lunch breaks, even in restaurant bathrooms when we were out as a family. The thrill was incredible, having this secret, intense connection, while Keith remained completely oblivious to who I was becoming. The man who claimed to love me couldn't even tell that I was a completely different person than the woman he'd married. Keith would try to initiate intimacy occasionally, and I'd make excuses because, honestly, how could I go back to his gentle, uninspired touch after experiencing real passion? His hurt feelings seemed so insignificant compared to the electric anticipation I felt waiting for Master D's next message. Keith's idea of foreplay was asking if I wanted to go to bed early tonight, like we were scheduling a business meeting. Master D made it clear that hesitation or saying no meant losing him completely, and I took that responsibility seriously. Finally, here was someone who appreciated my efforts, who challenged me to be better, instead of just accepting whatever version of myself I presented. Keith had let me become invisible in my own marriage, but Master D saw everything I had to offer and demanded more. The commands became more intense, more frequent, more consuming. Master D would call at random times expecting immediate compliance, and I rearranged my entire schedule around being available for him. Keith never noticed the changes in my routine, never questioned why I was suddenly so protective of my phone, or why I'd disappear to take work calls at strange hours. That's the thing about Keith. He's so comfortable with his assumptions about who I am that he never bothers looking deeper. I was documenting everything for Master D, sending him proof of my obedience and dedication. It felt like finally having someone who valued my efforts, who noticed when I went above and beyond, who made me feel like I was worth fighting for. Keith just expected me to exist quietly in the background of his life, grateful for his basic decency and steady paycheck. When Master D announced he was coming to my city for business and wanted to meet in person, I didn't hesitate for a second. I told Keith I was meeting my friend Sarah for shopping and drove to the location Master D specified. Getting into his car felt like stepping into a completely different version of my life. One where I was desired and claimed and truly seen by someone who mattered. We drove to this secluded parking area behind some industrial buildings, and I gave myself to him completely in the back seat of his car. The whole time, I kept thinking about Keith at home with Lily, probably helping with her social studies project or making her favorite grilled cheese sandwich. The irony wasn't lost on me, Keith being the predictable, reliable father, while I was finally experiencing what it meant to be possessed by someone who knew how to take what he wanted. Master D photographed everything, told me these images would prove my dedication to him and show the other girls what real submission looked like. I felt proud, accomplished, finally worthy of someone's complete attention and approval. When I got home that evening, Keith asked if I'd had a good time shopping with Sarah and didn't even look up from his laptop when I answered. The man was so checked out of our marriage that he never questioned anything I told him. That night, when Keith tried to touch me in bed, I felt physically sick. How could I go back to his tepid, considerate approach after experiencing real intensity and passion? I told him I had a headache and turned away from him. He just said okay and went to sleep. That's Keith for you. Zero persistence, zero fight for what he supposedly wanted. If he'd really cared about our connection, wouldn't he have pushed harder? Wouldn't he have demanded to know what was wrong? Keith discovered the messages completely by accident when he borrowed my phone to call his sister Patricia because his battery had died. I probably should have been more careful with my privacy settings, but honestly, part of me was getting tired of living this double life. Maintaining two completely different versions of myself was exhausting, and maybe I wanted him to find out. When he confronted me with screenshots of my conversations with Master D, I felt this strange mix of relief and irritation. Here was Keith, finally showing some real emotion, finally caring enough about something to raise his voice and demand answers. He wanted to know who Master D was, how long it had been going on, what exactly we'd done together. For the first time in years, Keith was actually paying attention to me. I told him the truth because I was exhausted from pretending Keith satisfied me in any meaningful way. I explained that Master D gave me something Keith never could: genuine desire, real passion, a sense of being truly valued and claimed by someone who knew what he wanted. Keith's reaction was so typically him: hurt feelings, accusations of betrayal, demands to know how I could do this to our family. But never once did he ask why this happened. Never once did he examine what he might have done differently to prevent me from looking elsewhere for connection. Instead, he became obsessed with comparing himself to Master D, wanting to know every humiliating detail about what I'd done with him. When I tried to explain that Master D had awakened parts of me that Keith had ignored for years, Keith accused me of making excuses and trying to blame him for my choices. The man who'd sleepwalked through our marriage for over a decade suddenly wanted to be outraged that I'd found real connection with someone else. He kept asking what Master D had that he didn't, and I wanted to scream everything. The confidence, the decisiveness, the ability to make me feel like something worth pursuing, instead of just accepting whatever I offered. I agreed to marriage counseling because I knew it would buy me time to figure out what I actually wanted moving forward. The therapist, this older woman who clearly sided with Keith from day one, kept pushing this narrative about accountability and rebuilding trust. She wanted me to apologize for seeking passion and connection, to promise I'd never look outside our marriage again for what Keith refused to provide. But honestly, I wasn't sorry for finally feeling alive. I was sorry Keith found out before I was ready to have that conversation. But I wasn't sorry for choosing real desire over settling for a man who treated me like a roommate who occasionally warmed his bed. The therapist kept talking about betrayal and commitment, but what about Keith's betrayal of our marriage by becoming this passive, boring shell of a man who expected me to be grateful for basic human decency? Master D stopped responding to my messages right after Keith contacted him. Apparently, once there was real-world drama involved, the excitement faded for him too. Typical behavior from someone who was obviously just looking for easy conquests without any actual commitment or courage to fight for what he claimed to want. Keith filed for divorce 4 months after everything came out. He said he couldn't trust me, couldn't get past what I'd done, couldn't rebuild with someone who'd been living a complete lie. But here's what really bothered me. He never once asked if there was anything he could have done differently. Never examined his own role in creating a marriage so dead that I had to look elsewhere for any sign of life. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Keith's lawyer painted me as this unfaithful wife who destroyed our family for selfish reasons, while Keith sat there, looking like the wronged husband who'd done everything right. No one wanted to hear about the years of emotional neglect, the way Keith had let our connection die through pure indifference and laziness. Keith got primary custody of Lily, which honestly surprised me. I thought courts favored mothers, but apparently having an affair counts against you even when your husband drove you to it through years of taking you for granted. Lily keeps asking when Daddy and I are getting back together. And I hate that I'm painted as the villain in this situation, when really, I just refuse to keep pretending that a dead marriage was worth preserving for appearances. Now, 10 months after Keith moved out of our house and I moved into this cramped one-bedroom apartment, I'm still processing how quickly everything unraveled. The house went to Keith since he could afford the mortgage payments on his own, and I'm struggling to make rent while he's living comfortably in the home we built together. Keith's already in a new relationship. I found out through mutual friends who seemed way too eager to update me on his newfound happiness. Some quiet woman named Rebecca who works in accounting and apparently thinks Keith's boring predictability is stability rather than emotional laziness. They're welcome to each other, honestly. She can deal with his complete lack of passion and initiative for the rest of her life. What really gets me is how quickly Keith bounced back. Within 6 months of our divorce being finalized, he was already introducing this woman to Lily and acting like the three of them were some perfect little family. Meanwhile, I'm still trying to figure out how to rebuild a life I didn't realize I'd completely destroyed in my quest for something real. People keep telling me I threw away a good man, but they don't understand what it's like to be married to someone who lets you become invisible. Good men don't create situations where their wives have to look elsewhere for passion and genuine connection. Keith might be nice and reliable, but nice isn't enough when you're dying inside from lack of real intimacy and understanding. The dating scene at 40 is absolutely brutal. Men my age either want someone in their 20s or they're looking for an instant stepmother for their kids from previous marriages. Nobody wants a woman who's still figuring out what she wants, who's just discovering what real passion feels like after years of settling for lukewarm affection. I keep telling myself that Keith's new happiness is just rebound energy, that he'll realize what he lost once the novelty wears off with Rebecca. But watching him last week when he picked up Lily, seeing how genuinely content and confident he looked, I'm starting to wonder if maybe our divorce was the best thing that ever happened to him. Not that I'll admit that to anyone, because honestly, I still believe I deserved better than what Keith was giving me. I deserved someone who saw me as worth pursuing, worth fighting for, worth making an effort to truly know and desire. Keith never made me feel like I was worth the effort, and Rebecca gets to benefit from whatever lessons our divorce taught him about being present in a relationship. That's probably the hardest part. Knowing that she's getting the improved version of the man I spent 12 years trying to connect with. She gets Keith 2.0, the version who apparently learned how to be engaged and attentive after I'd already given up hope. But I can't regret choosing myself over a marriage that was slowly suffocating who I really was inside. I refuse to apologize for finally putting my own needs first, instead of just accepting whatever scraps of attention Keith was willing to give me. Everyone wants me to feel guilty for destroying our family. But what family? We were 3 people living in the same house, going through the motions of caring about each other, while I slowly disappeared into the background of Keith's comfortable, predictable life. At least now, I know what real desire feels like. What it's like to be with someone who actually wants to possess and claim me, instead of just expecting me to be grateful for basic human decency. Even if that someone turned out to be a coward who disappeared the moment things got complicated, at least I experienced what I'd been missing all those years with Keith. Sometimes I catch myself wondering what would have happened if I'd tried to talk to Keith about how disconnected and invisible I felt before looking elsewhere for connection. But honestly, Keith's not the type to handle difficult conversations well. He would have just suggested we try date nights or couples therapy or something equally surface level, missing the point entirely like he always did. The therapist says I need to take responsibility for my choices. But how do you take responsibility for wanting to feel alive in your own life? How do you apologize for refusing to accept a marriage where you're slowly disappearing? Keith might be thriving now with his new girlfriend, but that doesn't erase the years where he treated me like furniture that occasionally needed maintenance. Most days I tell myself that being alone is better than being invisible. Some days I wonder if I should have just accepted that lukewarm was better than nothing at all. But then I remember how alive I felt with Master D, how valued and desired and truly seen, and I know I can't go back to pretending that kind of connection doesn't matter. Keith and Rebecca are already talking about moving in together, from what I hear through the gossip network of mutual friends. Good for them. Maybe she's better at appreciating his particular brand of steady reliability. Maybe she's the type who finds predictability romantic instead of suffocating, who doesn't need passion and intensity to feel fulfilled. Me, I'm still waiting for someone who can give me what Master D promised, but with the courage to stick around when things get complicated. Someone who sees me as worth fighting for, not just convenient to have around. Even if that means starting over completely at 40 with nothing but the memory of what real passion feels like to keep me going.